Okay, so I promised a video talking about the alleged Big Three in Boston because a lot of people want to use the excuse. I posted a video last week talking about LeBron James was the architect of the Big Three. You know, if you can't beat them, just join them. All right, type of mentality, and that spawned others to copy the blueprint and say, you know what, if LeBron James can do it, why can't we do it? All right. Now, a lot of the blind witnesses out there like to throw this excuse out there on social media saying, well, technically LeBron James didn't start or even form the Big Three. I mean, look at Boston. He had no choice. He could beat those guys. Which, by the way, are these guys going to be in the Basketball Hall of Fame? Are these guys going to be remembered 20 years from now? Okay, because we're going to always remember Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, even Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, and yes, LeBron James. We're going to remember those guys for years to come. People don't even remember these guys now. Okay? What makes you think people are going to remember them 20 years from now? All right? So let's go down memory lane, shall we? Because I have receipts. All right? Let's start off with Ray Allen. Ray Allen started in the NBA with the Milwaukee Bucks. He was with the big dog, Glenn Robinson and Sam Cassell. They were the Big Three before there was even a Big Three. And they even had George Karl as their head coach. All right? And in that tenure, they won zilch when it came to NBA championships, NBA finals. Oh, they, wined and dined us with some spectacular play and, some spectacular regular season games. But when it really mattered the most, they all squandered their talent. They all squandered their uses, okay? So what happened? Ray Allen went to the Supersonics because, after all, Ray Allen is this quote-unquote one of the founding members of the first Big Three, because LeBron James stole that idea, right? Okay, so Ray Allen went to the Supersonics. What did Ray Allen did? He was a below 20-point scorer, all right? He couldn't get the Supersonics deep into the postseason. And his time and tenure with the Seattle Supersonics, guess how many championships Ray Allen won? You heard me right. Zilch, all right? Nada, okay? So that's Ray Allen's career in a nutshell, which, by the way, he talked about how Kobe Bryant should stop being selfish. If he stopped being selfish, he can win more titles. Kobe Bryant has more titles, more final appearances, more playoff experience than one Ray Allen, okay? But I digress, okay? Let's move on to the next person. Okay? Oh, and by the way, fun fact, this is how much Ray Allen did for the Seattle Supersonics. They moved the team to the Oklahoma City Thunder, okay, to Oklahoma, and they named them the Oklahoma City Thunder, okay? So that's the imprint of Ray Allen with the NBA, with the Seattle Supersonics and the Milwaukee Bucks, okay? So let's fast forward to Kevin Garnett, whatever you want to call him, the big ticket, whatever. He started with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Guess how many titles Kevin Garnett won with the Minnesota Timberwolves? Zilch. Had plenty of talent around him. Had Sprewell. He had a lot of players around him. Even Sam Cassell joined him at one time with the Timberwolves. All right. So Kevin Garnett, biggest claim to fame as a big man with moves of a guard. Can dribble the ball with either hand, has a great mid-range, shoot threes. He was not the traditional big man, okay? He really was Dirk Nowitzki before Nowitzki even made it to the NBA. That's what Kevin Garnett did with his tenure with the Minnesota Timberwolves. They won no titles. They didn't even go deep into the playoffs, and he didn't do diddly squat with them other than make a lot of money for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Okay. Fun fact about Kevin Garnett: when they was talking to Kevin Garnett about possibly going to trading him to the Boston Celtics, he didn't want to do it. Okay. He didn't want to do it. All right. So that's the retrospect of Kevin Garnett, by the way. All right. Let's fast forward to Paul Pierce. Let's talk about Paul Pierce for a second. He spent the majority of his time with the Boston Celtics. Won, individual awards. Okay. But as far as him going to the taking the Boston Celtics to the next level, or even to the postseason, or even into the NBA Finals on his own with other players around him, he did diddly squat. Okay, his claim to fame, his rise to fame, is when he joined up with Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, which coincidentally, that's really their only rise to fame. Okay, people seem to forget what else was with the Boston Celtics at that time as far as coaching and other acquisitions. We'll get into that later on in this video, but let's just stay focused on Paul Pierce, okay? Was in a shooting, his claim to fame was he was involved in a shooting. Someone accidentally shot him, a rapper. He was a beef with a rapper in Boston, things of that nature. He's talented. All of them were talented, but when it came with their tenure with that particular team, they did absolutely diddly squat. They had decent coaches, they had decent talent. Okay, now, but these are guys that are supposed to be the original big three, right? By the way, if you look at their the tail of the tape when it comes to their stats, there was borderline 20 points a game, I think Kevin Garnett was borderline. He was hovering around 18 points a game. Ray Allen, he's supposed to be this guy that can shoot threes anywhere, who's like a microwave, he can just score relentlessly. But yet, when you look at his box scores, I mean, the most he have ever scored was really with his time with the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, when you talk about Paul Pierce, that's pretty much it. All right, so let's talk about when they all formed together and this quote unquote alleged big three. All right, let's just talk about that for a second, okay? People seem to forget and sleep on the other acquisitions Boston already had established with the organization, even before they even traded for Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett. Okay, so they also had a guy by the name of Rondo. Seemed like people seem to forget about him. And they also had I forgot his name. I just had his name in my the baby. Glenn Davis. They also had him. Plus, they also had other role players on that roster, okay? And they had a great up-and-coming coach of Doc Rivers, which, by the way, fun fact, he coached for the Hawks as well as the Orlando Magic, and he was doing so phenomenal with the Orlando Magic. Danny Ainge had to get him, all right? He was a must-have, okay? Seemed like people seem to sleep on Doc Rivers. I think Doc Rivers' best coaching gig, the best time Doc Rivers was Doc Rivers, is when he coached of those players with the Boston Celtics, all right? So let's talk about that infamous game, that infamous series where ultimately LeBron James had to take his talents to South Beach. In that particular series, LeBron James was dominating those guys, by the way, those alleged, quote unquote, the architects of the big three in Boston. He was pretty much dominating them, except the last two games, he fall flat. And if you read the storylines, he wasn't too happy with management. He had an altercation with another player, Deontay West, because Wes was in a relationship with his mother. And some guys, particularly guys that's been around their mothers the majority of their life, they're going to handle it differently, okay? And I'm not giving him any excuses, but it just seems like when we got all that stuff around you, plus the fact that you're learning how to become a leader, and LeBron James was not the pure leader that he is today, or when he first went to Miami. That was one of the reasons why he went to Miami. He went to Miami because he wanted to be paired up with a better organization, Pat Riley, with a decorated player such as Dwayne Wade, and you got Chris Bosh also in the mix, which, by the way, Chris Bosh was going to Miami if LeBron wasn't even going to go. If LeBron chose to went to Cleveland. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of free agents, it wasn't the fact that free agents didn't want to go to Cleveland because they don't want to live there, or Cleveland was the city was god awful to them, or it wasn't a best place, a lifestyle, or any of that crap. It's just the fact that you would think a talent such as LeBron James could gravitate players to come to him. No, LeBron James had to go to other players at that particular time because LeBron James hasn't figured it out yet. He didn't win anything. Yes, he took the teams to the playoffs, but when it really mattered the most, he shrank in pressure. And a lot of NBA players saw that. So that's why they couldn't get talent. It wasn't the fact of the owner or the city of Cleveland. It's just a simple fact that LeBron at that particular time was not the phenomenal leader that he is today. And the only reason why he's the leader that he is today because his time and tenure with Miami, with Pat Riley, with Dwayne Wade, they showed him they gave him the blueprint on how to win. All right? That's why he's a better leader now than he was in his first stint with Cleveland. All right? So for all the nonsense that people talk about how they give LeBron James passes and excuses, and when you throw facts like, LeBron was the first player who had the mentality of, if you can't beat them, join them. Just join up with them, okay? Instead of trying to beat Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, let's just form our own big three. These were the best of the best at that particular time. These were the top 5 players at that particular time. No one's not going to mistake that big three to the Boston big three, okay? By any stretch of, even in their primes, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin Garnett was never in no discussions as the best 5 players at that particular time. All right, let's just go ahead and just get rid of that nonsense. All right, that big three can never beat any big three. Now, if y'all want to call these guys a big three, no, you have to also realize that they got these players after their prime. Okay, Ray Allen was phenomenal with Milwaukee. Okay. As an individual player with the Supersonics, he was okay, decent, all right? But now, when he was landed with Boston, where he went to a team where the team's not going to be put on his back, he was just the guy. He was just the guy. He wasn't the man. And they won a championship because of that. Same with Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett in Minnesota did phenomenal things with Minnesota. But you also got to remember, these 2 players were beyond their prime. Okay, it was after their prime. And they won a title because of that. And kudos to them. Congratulations. But to sit up here and to say that they're the architects of the big three. All right. Now, I will say this. Even though LeBron James started the big three, I feel like he had no choice but to go in that direction. Players were not joining him. They was not joining allegiance with him because he did not prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that he could take teams to the promised land. Okay? Which is kind of funny. And when people always say, well, Cleveland is a bad place to live, nobody really wants to go to live in Cleveland. Okay? Even though these NBA players, they consider where they play at is just where they work at. They don't necessarily live there. A lot of these players live in Miami and California, and they've been doing that since the beginning of time. All right, so so to put it on Cleveland, why he couldn't get him. Why he couldn't get anybody, because it's Cleveland. Nobody wanted to go to Cleveland. I remember Stephen A. Smith saying that. Who wants to live in Cleveland? No, these players don't live in the place where they play and where they play basketball at. Secondly, it's amazing how the Greek freak, Giannis, can get players to come to him in Milwaukee, okay? But LeBron James can't get anybody to come join him. Hell, there was players leaving him. I forgot the one particular. Oh, Carlos Boozer. He was with LeBron James. And you know what he did? He went to the Jazz. He went to the Utah Jazz. He left LeBron and went to the Utah Jazz. Now, some people will say, well, that's greener pastures. They was going to pay him more money than Cleveland. And all that could be 100% true. But that just, at that particular time, folks, you have to realize LeBron wasn't the same LeBron that he is today. All right. If LeBron would have won titles in Cleveland, he would have no problem getting players to join forces with him. He would have no problems of players taking pay cuts to join him. All right. Y'all got to also understand Shane Battier played in Miami with LeBron. A multitude of other players that would have been starters on other teams, sacrifice their time and their role just to pair up with LeBron, the big three, because those were the three best players particularly in top. Now Chris Bosh, he may not be top 5, but he's still in the top 10. Those are better high end players than Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin Garnett. Okay. Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett was past their prime. They was just on the cusp of passing their prime. Okay. Those three players, it wasn't like, okay, we should have an easy time of winning championships there. And people seem to forget the other assets that the Boston Celtics had as well. People seem to forget that. And people seem to forget the coach. Doc Rivers was a hellified coach at that particular time. He did some phenomenal coaching moves with his tenure with the Celtics, then with the Clippers. And, even though it's young and it's early with the Philadelphia 76ers, still, when you got all of those ingredients working for you, you also have to give a lot of credit where credit is due. So this, I wanted to lay to rest this ridiculous rumor, this myth that's been busted. Look, the Boston Big Three, y'all want to call them the Boston Big Three. I really want to call them the Boston Celtic team that won the title. They're not the Big Three, okay? Yeah, they have iconic names, okay, at that particular time, but they weren't, but by any stretch of the imagination, they were not a Big Three. Get it out of your head, okay? So I promise you guys I was going to do this video. I know this video is extremely long. Tell me what you think. Rate, comment, subscribe. I will talk to you guys later. Deuces.